Hello everyone and welcome to the Smashi Business Show. Today is Friday, March 6, 2026 and I'm Abdul Majid Awan.
And I'm Richard Fitzgerald. Good morning.
Yeah, and for the headlines for today, Gulf states review global investments as war strains budget. FTA has reported UAE weighs freezing Iranian assets as conflict with Tehran escalates. David Ellison has pledged that CNN editorial independence will stay as Gulf-backed Paramount wins $111 billion Warner Brothers deals. But before we go into the details of all the stories, we should talk about this. And so first of all, Rich is here with me today. Rich, how important have been the last few days for media, from the media perspective, from safety perspective, from mentality perspective?
Immensely important. Imagine, you guys have done an amazing job at reporting at all angles across the region and business and all the different updates that have happened. Media has been important, and it's just been a fairly, monumental occurrence for all of us. And although people in the news would stay on top of and read between the lines and see, read the tea leaves and see what's happening, there's always been that threat. But I don't think anyone really expected to happen what happened. And and real-time media, you can't really overly plan. You just have to cover things as they happen, as is reporting, as is what it is. In terms of the importance in fact-checking and things like that, I think a lot of, I know the Love and Dubai team have said it's important to trust sources and things like that. It's not that it's there is a point I want to make about platforms and reliable information and fake information, but it's not that it's just important to get the government sources. It's also, why is that important? Because they verify it and they, in one way control the narrative and they push out other things, but they're also use the word off air, sanitize, they're also making, not PG, but they're just making it less stressful. Because why do we need to be in a state of panic? If we're in a state of panic, it leads to rational behavior, economically, personally, things like that. Yes, obviously, protecting people's safety is to do with protecting the economy, making sure goods and services run on time.
Yes.
It's all impacted. And if people overreact, those things start getting impacted. It's not just about optics. It's not just about reputation. If people take everything off the shelves, then there's none left for other people. Yeah. And it just has a trickle effect, and media can whip people into a frenzy. And so when they say, choose what to post and whether to whip people into frenzy or put fear-mongering information up, which is why there's been a lot of narrative around the Western media in the UK and how they've covered some stuff about here. And we're all a bit annoyed by it and then there's the counter thing of saying influencers are saying it's safe. But then people are saying, influencers are paid to say it's safe and it's all a big narrative, it's all a big debate. But if you think about it from a leadership point of view, it looks on the face of it as optics, but actually it's to do with there's no need to, you can hear the noises, there's no need to whip it up more. And social media has a way of, one video in a corner of a city does not impact the whole city. And we see this, when we see things happening in other parts of the world, whether it's a natural disaster or whether it's anything, we might think that everyone in that city is impacted. But because we see a video and there's people in the video and there's people running, but maybe it's an isolated moment in 10 minutes of a day in one corner of a city, not downplaying what's going on. And then on the other platforms, X is really having a moment in terms of all the news is coming from X. X is, I think, the social media platform. I saw the head of product, he's quite active on X, obviously, and he said they had their highest day before this, this war started. And but I think they're even higher now. However, they really do have a fake news issue, and whether it's videos of fires that happened before in Dubai and not now, and their community notes just isn't fast enough, and Grok just isn't fast enough. to verify and fact check.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff up there. Like, it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And now AI is coming to it. Like, I saw a tweet this morning, or a post on X this morning, saying there's a heavy blast in Dubai, and people are like, there isn't, but it's too late, because
People have started thinking like it is.
Yeah, and it's not just about Dubai, but it's just everything.
Yeah.
It's Iran optics, it's Israel optics, US optics. And there's a really good podcast with A16Z. They talked about new media. This is Andreessen Horowitz, the investors. And I think it was Mark Andreessen, who said that new media is about basically social media posts being in real time. Yeah. And then the media companies are sharing what's being said. He said it in a derogatory way. He said it in a way that, like, they're always playing catch up. But you know, that is the news sources. Like, if you're on X, you will get a flavor of everything. Yes. You know, but actually, the media resharing what they're saying, but making context of it, is super important. Yeah. Because so is community notes, so is AI, so is fact checking, so is the platform's diligence. But media making sense of it. You know, I can get a lot of fast news from Instagram and from X, right? But really, in the last week, if I sit down and read the FT, I'll get more. Now, the FT did things that we don't agree with. Yeah. They did two opposite opposing articles about Dubai, but there are two pieces over the weekend about how Ayatollah Khomeini was assassinated, and how the other piece of, you know, the first bits of reporting on the war was done so well and so detailed. Yeah. And you just value the profession of the journalism to do that. Yeah. So I think like, yes, new media is about fast posting and about getting sense of every direction, but there's also a sort of a curation aspect to it to make sense of it, and to add some lens to it as well.
Yeah, and before we move on, Rich, to give you a very nice 101 on sources and how to read news. Actually, it's media education, I would say, that you need sometimes to read the news. But the current situation right now is very controlled. UAE Armed Forces, the last updates that we got, we would share it and then we will move on to our stories, is that they've they've detected 196 ballistic missiles, intercepted 181, 13 impacted in the sea. Cruise missiles, 8 were detected, 8 were intercepted. This is the last update on March 5 yesterday. Today we'll get a new one. And unmanned aerial vehicles, which are drones, 1,072 drones, Rich, and 1,001 intercepted and 71 impacted, the debris and everything. So that's all what's going on. They're doing their best. We did a story over the weekend. It was crazy good. That $1 million per interception. And then there was a lot of versions. Reuters did a version there where they were like $1 billion per day they're spending to intercept these missiles. I think we should be thankful that we live in a developed country which can afford to defend all of this. They have the money, they have the resources, they bought and built their arsenal over the years. So it's a money thing, I think.
Yeah, and it sort of segues into the first story that, I'll let you take it, but I think the point is that, they are paying for it. Yeah. But I think the deal was, the Allies' deal is that, like, with the US, is that, we'll invest in the $1 trillion, and a nice story that you did today, and you'll talk about it. In return, please protect us. And, they protect the Iron Dome in Israel, but they're not really protecting, they're not giving us an Iron Dome, are they? We have to do it ourselves. But such is the... We
actually had to buy the whole system from them, from the US, to protect ourselves. And
we pay for it. We don't get the billions that other countries do get. But, it is a regional thing, and it's important that everyone stays safe. But the first thing is, like, we are protecting their air bases, and then the attacks sort of went beyond their air bases. But the initial thing was, like, if you have a base, would you not protect your own base? Would you not?
Would you protect your own port, or would you protect a US base? It's that simple. But several Gulf economies are reviewing major international investment commitments that we reported on in the last year as the regional conflict with Iran puts increasing pressure on government finances. According to the Financial Times, Rich was just talking about it, an official source said that 3 of the 4 Gulf economies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, and Qatar have jointly discussed the economic strain caused by the ongoing war, while the official did not name the specific states.
So they said 3 or 4, but they named 4.
They said 3 of the biggest, and then 4 is Kuwait. So they framed it very nicely, like 3 of the biggest Gulf economies and Kuwait. And I was like, Kuwait has I think $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund, but they're not very good with marketing.
Okay.
Yeah. But while the official did not name the specific states involved, they said governments across the region are reassessing financial commitments as costs mount.
Officials say several countries have begun internal reviews to determine whether force majeure clauses could be evoked in existing contracts. We saw that force majeure was enforced by Qatar for LNG contracts, and there are reports that ADNOC are looking at some commitments. But this is obviously related to other investments rather than supply of energy at the moment. We are talking about bigger investments, and we'll get into it. The aim is to ease the economic pressure if the conflict continues, i.e., if the Gulf have to pay so much on the pressures on the economy, but also on the defense capabilities here, then how can they commit to the $1 trillion investments that they've got for things like AI data centers, etc.? The review also includes current and future investment commitments abroad as governments weigh how to manage rising defense spending and slowing revenues.
And the financial pressure comes as shipping disruptions through the Strait of Hormuz, a key route for around a fifth, 20% of global oil and gas trade, have slowed exports with multiple tankers struck during the conflict. Gulf economies are also facing weaker income from tourism and aviation, while energy exports have been disrupted.
The potential review is drawing attention in Washington. Gulf sovereign wealth funds are among the world's largest investors. We have Abu Dhabi's Mubadala Investment Company was the most active sovereign wealth fund globally in 2024 and 2025. Meanwhile, Saudi Crown Prince Hamad bin Salman has pledged $600 billion in U.S. investments, while the UAE announced a $1.4 trillion U.S. investment framework over the next decade, targeting artificial intelligence, semiconductors, energy, and manufacturing.
All of this can go away if this continues. I was reading a Bloomberg analysis. They said that they've prepared for the war till September. It's more than we can imagine and we would have thought of. It's a war that's not showing any signs of ending. Right now, every day at some point we hear something, we get a notification. It's a very nice way of keeping the audience or keeping the population aware of what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that the UAE is not at war. It has not declared a state of war. It did not come out on the first day and say we are at war with Iran. It's taking a measured response. It's protecting. It's saying it has the right to respond. And we'll talk about some measures that they might look at now. But yeah, the timeline on this is unpredictable. There was something about the US allowing Russia to sell oil into India, and that will be a 30-day framework. So people are thinking, okay, does that mean it's going to continue for 30 days? We've heard that months out of the US. We've heard that Iran are in it for the long haul. So what does this look like? And I think it's important not to speculate, not to, prepare both ways, one way or the other, but don't over-speculate. Yeah. There's also a little bit of precedence for this. Like last June, there was a US-Israel-Iran war. It was known as the 12-Day War. Yeah. We would hope that this war will be known as the second X-Day War. Who knows? We're in day 6 or day 7 now.
7.
Day 7 now, and maybe. But as you said, we see what's happening with the invasion, troop invasion into Lebanon. A lot of people out of Beirut are being, displaced. Basically, numbers are 250,000, 500,000 people in a capital city, of a sovereign state being displaced. So there's lots of spill off and spillover. So when there's so much of that, it's harder to end it. Like last June, it was quite contained between entities. This is a lot more, and there's a lot of different actors involved, and there's a lot of different responses. So to find an off-ramp, as the word that they're using to, maybe save face and things like that, no one really sees an off-ramp. But, these things are often about momentum, and definitely at the moment, the momentum is with the Iranians in terms of the response. You know, the Ayatollah has been removed, but there isn't regime change.
Yeah, his son is prepared. They're
It
preparing his
depends,
son.
yeah, you know, but there isn't regime change, you know, and the response has been emphatic and devastating to all of us. So the momentum is on that side, and that, you know, in that case, will that swing back? And you know, how does that impact all these things that we're talking about? It looks like oil is past $80 a barrel, and it's on the way to 100, and it was languishing on 60s for a long time. So, you know, $100 oil will, you know, I've seen photos of gas stations in Asia that are big lines outside them, you know, and the US doesn't like, you know, if you hit them in the pocket, if you hit them, if you hit the gas stations, you know, they don't like that. And I think people shouldn't underestimate liquid nitrogen gas being stopped.
Thing,
Like, it's a big deal.
Because the main problem is LNG as a energy fuel is used less in cars or in planes, but the byproducts are used more. Urea and all these things. There are fertilizers that are used to grow crops. So your farming will be affected. That's one of the biggest byproducts of LNG. So that will be a question, like if there's less growth and there's less provision of food, and then there will
You
be
covered
a
a bit
problem.
of that with us. With, you know, you talked about taxes into Europe yesterday as well. But yeah, as you said, the UAE is considering one sort of
So the
economic
next
lever.
they're considering freezing billions of dollars in Iranian assets held in the country as part of potential measures against Iran. And this was according to a report by the Wall Street Journal. Officials familiar with the discussions say the move could cut off one of Tehran's most important financial lifelines, limiting its access to foreign currency and global trade networks as the conflict intensifies.
Sources say Emirati officials have privately warned Tehran about the possible action after Iran reportedly launched more than 1,000 drones and missiles at targets in the UAE. Authorities are examining several options, including freezing assets tied to shadow companies used to mask Iranian trade activity and tightening scrutiny on currency exchanges that more funds outside formal banking systems.
And the major focus, major focus of any financial crackdown could be accounts linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the powerful Iranian military force responsible for protecting the leaders and the regime and expanding its regional influence. Analysts say the US has long served as a key financial and commercial hub, but US has moved from the gray to the white list in FATF. So everything that has a shadow around it, they are removing all those companies and everything. They're working on it very nicely.
Yeah. So policymakers are also considering maritime enforcement measures, including the seizure of Iranian ships operating in regional waters. Any such actions would represent a significant shift in UAE's approach to Iran, as the Gulf state has traditionally balanced its strategic alliance with the US with maintaining economic ties with its neighbor across the Gulf.
Yeah, and Iran is one of the neighbors of Pakistan as well. And as Rich was pointing it out, that there's long lines. Very rarely we see that countries go to a point where they're reviewing oil prices or gas or energy prices weekly. Pakistan has done that.
Yeah.
My father went to the a petrol station and it was like only 5 liters. Okay. And he was like, so I can come around again? He was like, yeah, if you can wait for 2 hours in the line again, we'll give you 5 liters more. So this is happening. Things are happening across the Gulf as well. But energy is one of the main reasons that we're building so many data centers. And this move will cut off the money supply to Iranian Revolutionary Guard. That's the motive. I think going on a military offensive is, I think, the last option. Even when the press conference happened, we saw that this had measured, measured, nothing offensive.
Not to act like we're experts, but you know, from an economic point of view. But I think, you know, in the build-up to this, we were shown images and the might of the US investment, the cost of these boats, the cost of these fighter jets, and all the base across the region. And I saw some commentary analysis that said, like, you know, that build-up of might comes from a Cold War era, and it's thinking like, it's not just David Goliath, but it's thinking like that the might there will intimidate. And we did think that that was the leverage that the President Trump was using to get a deal, and negotiations were taking place, and it did look like that, you know, in the mediators out of Oman, you know, last Friday, the word from one of the Sultan's team there was saying that the concessions have been agreed and we're in a really good place. And of course, that was the same as last June. And then Israel attacked because they don't want the agreement to be reached. It looks like, and I think they kind of said that. So, but in terms of what's happened since is that maybe there are other things at play, and that's why the economic role is so important to this, the economic factor, and that's why we're covering it at length, because it has spin-off and has repercussions in every way. And also, for us, it's less fearful to say that, for us, we'd nearly prefer if the UAE fights back economically rather than militarily. It's just, even though they have a really good military here, people do military service, and a lot of the countries in the region do have good military as well, not to be underestimated, but it would be safer for everyone if it is more economic.
It stays a conflict, it doesn't turn into a war, because war is tit for tat, I think. On this note, I just remembered, EGBI yesterday reported, they quoted a Chainalysis analysis which says that the cryptocurrency activity has spiked in Iran. So this can be stopped, that cannot be stopped. That's a whole other discussion why cryptocurrency naysayers were always like, oh, this is an informal way of economy. But let's move on to the last story of the day. It's a very interesting update on a story that we've been following for a long time. The chief executive of Paramount Skydance, David Ellison, has pledged to protect the editorial independence of CNN after his company won a $111 billion bid to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. Speaking to CNBC, Ellison said both CNN and CBC News would maintain independent journalism under the new ownership.
Ellison said that the goal is to serve audiences across the political spectrum, emphasizing what he called the commitment to truth business and the trust business. The deal brings major media assets under Paramount Skydance, including CNN, HBO, and a vast film library, following a months-long bidding battle with Netflix, which has been fascinating, and obviously we've covered it from a Gulf standpoint.
However, the takeover has raised concerns inside CNN. Some staff fear the newsroom's independence could be threatened, particularly given Ellison's ties to Donald Trump through his father, Lely Ellison, founder of Oracle. The concerns intensified after the appointment of journalist Barry Weiss to lead CBS News last year, a move seen by critics as shifting the network's editorial direction.
So pro-Israel Barry Weiss, founder of the Free Press, who sold it to David Ellison for 150 million or so, or 200 million, and then she took over the editorial newsroom of CBS, and now that would be including CNN as well. So the takeover is also backed by Gulf Sovereign Wealth Funds, Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, PIF, obviously QIA in Qatar, and Abu Dhabi's Limad, the newly formed vehicle, are investing a combined $24 billion each, we're told, in the transaction. However, they haven't, in the last round of media rounds, and Jerry Cardinal, who's the chief of Redbird, who are the capital behind David Ellison, he spoke on a media podcast this week, and he was, they pushed him on this point, and he didn't really. He said that he used nice, fancy capital investment words, but he basically said, we haven't really decided where the money's coming from yet. And he won't, because he knows it's a tenuous topic about editorial influence. And, in the US, they're saying, well, will the Gulf have influence on CNN? And that's a problem, etc. Rather than wondering that if Barry Weiss has influence on CNN, if that's a problem. But, they're kind of saying that the Gulf, overall, they're sort of, saying what ownership will have a problem on media. And I guess it is an important point. We see, they asked the question when Mark Benioff of Salesforce owns Time Magazine, or Jeff Bezos owns Washington Post, etc., etc. So they're asking the question again about editorial influence. Ellison also said the company plans to expand CNN and CBS News into streaming platforms as part of the long-term media strategy.
This was the interesting part. How would they turn CNN and CBS? Yesterday I was thinking about it, that maybe CNN becomes a streaming news. They shut down the TV channel, right?
Well, so it is. So basically when Jeff Zucker, interesting, is in the news at the moment through another Redbird IMI investment. So Jeff Zucker is now in Abu Dhabi with Redbird IMI, and they spent a couple of billion last year on all three media, UK type, and then the story, and I know you covered it yesterday, Banijay, the French conglomerate. That story is really interesting. So basically, a French entrepreneur, ex-media guy, in 2008 set up this vehicle, Banijay, and he started buying media production companies around the world. And imagine he bought so many. It was a really big M&A spree. It reminds me of Sir Martin Sorrell in the ad era. But in 2016 or 18, he bought Editorial. Like, he bought all the big production companies around the world. And yes, we picked out the headline things like Peaky Blinders and other IPs. But basically, it was a production company behemoth, and all three media were already really big. So what Abu Dhabi have done quite smartly is they've put two together. So they've put like a 4 billion and a 1.5 billion together and made a 6 or 7 billion production company, massive big entity. And Redbird are involved in that. And what Jerry Carnales said yesterday is that, like, you know, we can battle it out with Netflix for this 111 billion, and it has been brutal. And then at the same time, they also invest in Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's company. And they, at the same week, at the same time, they did a deal with Matt Damon and Affleck with Netflix. And there's lots of question marks over the terms of the deal and does it benefit the actors and all that sort of stuff. But it just shows how fluid and how dynamic business operators are in the media world and in many industries, but particularly in media in this sense. This deal, this sort of M&A deal, has been played out in the media. It's been played out here. It's been played out on podcasts. I think there was 10 total bids from Paramount. 9 bids, and then it was given to Netflix. Then it was reopened for 7 days. Now it's been given to Paramount. There are many books in media of a similar battle in the early 90s, and I think there's a business words on it as well. Basically, Sumner Redstone was the head of the biggest media company of the time. CBS and the other one merged together, Paramount, basically. And they kept changing names, but it did have MTV, it had everything on it. And Sherry Redstone is his daughter. He passed away, sadly, a few years ago. And she eventually sold Paramount for 7 or 8 billion or so to David Ellison about a year ago. Anyway, they've done really fast on that. And I'll talk about what they're doing, because you mentioned streaming. So, but Barry Diller tried to buy Paramount way back, and Sumner Redstone did lots of legal tactics to block the deals and whatever, and it was a huge media deal. Like it was like all stakes. By the way, the first offer of Paramount, of the 9 or 10 offers, was $19 a share or less, right? And they ended up paying $31 a share. What they thought they were getting for 60, 70, 80 billion or whatever, they ended up paying 111 billion. And to the point now, they were like, well, what if you can't pay it? So David's dad, Larry Oracle, said, well, I'll backstop it. I have to sign something, a pledge that, I will put 40-something billion towards it. But they're saying, well, where's the rest of the money coming from? And that's what they're pushing them on. And if they're saying, if there's 24 billion from the region, Mazen Hayek, a commentator from the region, and ex-NBC, said, well, if you're paying 24 billion, you're going to want to have a say. And they're hanging on this, like, is it a board seat or not? But I think it's the point of wanting to have a say is interesting. But in terms of the media world, like, it's easy to say that media is being changing, but I do think there is value in the institution. There is value in the IP if it's in the right hands, if it's nurtured in the right way. There is a value in CNN, and again, and Jerry Carnales said that, is like, yes, talent is important, but it's the talent that values the institution or the right talent, and that talent exists. Yes, there's talent that goes and does their own shows and podcasts, and that world exists as well. But the institution does have value, and CNN does have value. Now, the CNN business model is clearly broken, because we talked about Crapco or Spincos, where the cable assets, Netflix weren't even buying CNN. They weren't buying CNN, so because CNN's streaming assets isn't seen to be great, because when David Zaslav, Warner Brothers Discovery, he was the head of Discovery, when he took Warner Brothers out of AT&T, not that long ago, only a few years ago, CNN Plus was in the works, and it was about to come out. Actually, I think it did launch, and it was a flop, and he scrapped it. And it's been 3 or 4 years, there's been no real CNN Plus. But under his stewardship, they relaunched it, and they call it CNN All Access. So you can subscribe for $6.99 a month for CNN All Access. But, you know, there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of things like that. Now, what I found interesting about the whole Oracle and digital connection, as well as streaming, is they're talking about operationally digital. Like now, Larry Ellison owns TikTok in the US.
Yes.
Right? So, and he owns Oracle. So what can Paramount do in synergies here? Because they're saying they have to save billions of dollars, right? Like, but how can they do this? And Jerry Carnelli said, well, because Redbird are quite operational as a private equity. They're quite hands-on. And he's basically saying, well, Paramount had no tech. We're using Oracle's ERP systems and Oracle's tech to run Paramount, and we've saved 2 or 3 billion already, just because these are bloated machines, these are bloated operational things, not only on the business model side. And he also said they're very cash cows. Media still throws off so much cash. He didn't say how much revenue, but I know that Fox still generates $2 or $3 billion a year from advertising, and you know CNN won't be as much, but there's a lot of cash in there. Movies are still a lot of cash. So if you can, it's really private equity language, but if you can save a lot of money, and you know, but if you can use digital to do that, think of the synergies that can be made in terms of, you know, Paramount had no tech, now they're using Oracle's tech. If CNN and all these operations don't have that much tech, and if you have operators who come in and operate really from a digital efficiency point of view, think of the synergies that can be had. But I think there is a lot more questions around this, especially with AI coming. Like, you know, I know I've talked at length, but sort of my 2 cents on it is like Netflix have got off here. Like I think their Q4 revenue was
saved.
Yeah, their Q4 revenue was 2.5 billion. They got a break fee of 2.8 billion for getting out of this deal. So that, you know, and their share price is up 10, 15, 20% since they lost the deal. Like
touched $99 yesterday.
Yeah, the market didn't like that they were spending. They were spending 80 billion because they weren't buying the Crapco. But the market didn't like it, and now they like it. I think that if Netflix put half that money into an AI model, if they bought Luma Labs, or if they bought 11 Labs, if they bought something that will
they can very easily do that.
Yeah, like there's Ray 4, there's all these different video models now that if Netflix bought one of them, because that's the new studio, and like they're kind of saying, hey, we'll buy Warner Brothers because we'll have a studio, we can make 30 movies a year, and we'll keep going with the theatrical releases. But actually, if you can get AI movies made, and you really double down on that, and I think they will, because they're naturally a tech company.
I remember you're very bullish on those short movies that we see on TikTok, episodic, like 1 minute episode.
I think it's a buzz term. I what are they called? I always forget the term, but I think it's a buzz term. I don't know if I'm massively bullish on it, but the numbers sort of say that they're...
people love those, like 1 minute, 2 minute videos, and they're episodic.
Microdramas,
and they just happen, and you're like, okay, I just saw a drama in 10 videos, or 20 videos, or 30 videos. If Netflix can take AI Studio and make their own versions, why not? There is like 1 million things that can be done, but you're right that Netflix maybe got out of it, maybe saved themselves. To be honest, very, very over the top kind of a conspiracy theory. Maybe David Zaslav from WBD paid Warner Brothers, like, we will pay you the breakup fee, just keep pushing.
Yeah, maybe, but
and get the money out of it.
He sold a lot of shares on Monday. This week he sold personal shares. He also pockets $800 million out of this deal, and he's been promised a job on the new company. So,
I would want that job.
But he got the share. I had shares in Warner Brothers Discovery last year, and I sold them because they were so low. I think they were down to $10, $11 at some point, and the first bid was 19, and now that's been sold for 31. You know, I don't regret I said it wasn't a lot, but it's just he did like. His stewardship was bad in terms of he didn't do this Discovery Warner Brothers transaction to flip the company again in 2 years. Like, he was trying to cost save, but he couldn't turn the business around. So what people are saying is that, well, if he couldn't turn it around, why can the new owners turn it around? Because it is a declining space.
Yeah.
But their argument is that good operators will make it work, and I agree with them if they can.
Okay, just quickly, who's saying what? Yesterday, the Dubai Airport CEO Paul Griffiths was seen on the airport. He posted on LinkedIn. He praised the staff's resilience as operations slowly resume following recent disruptions. Today is March 6th, so today at midnight, Etihad's timing ends. Emirates has said that they've suspended flights till March 7. Etihad's suspension ends tonight. And Fly Dubai started small number of flights yesterday. So this is what he said.
Yeah.
Central bank.
Yeah, so the Central Bank of the UAE has reassured the public that the country's banking system remains strong, stable, and fully operational despite regional tensions. I think the AWS thing is more impactful than the money supply, but yeah.
But Governor Khalid Al-Balama said the sector continues to demonstrate the highest level of resilience and stability with banks and financial institutions operating normally.
Yeah.
And Emirati billionaire Khalaf Al-Abdur yesterday criticized Donald Trump over what he called a dangerous decision that has dragged the region into a war. It's a very long tweet, but it basically says that who gave you the authority? That was my punchline, because it's like, who gave you the authority to pull us into a war? And then he went on to defend American people as well. I love Khalaf Al-Abdur's tweets because he's always defending both sides. He didn't say that why only our people. He was like, you're pulling Americans who don't have jobs, who don't have this. You're pulling them into a war which they don't want.
Yeah, momentum is definitely going one direction at the moment, and you would hope that that will lead to Donald Trump striking a famous deal and ending this, today, inshallah.
What is it called? Trump always...
Art of the deal.
Taco.
Taco, yeah.
He does a taco, but this time on one.
Taco means again, like
Trump always chickens out.
Yeah.
That's what the trade is called. That he always says something, and then the markets go down, and then he chickens out, and the market goes up. But stock market wise, Gulf markets, thankfully EGX was 2%, 2.3% up. Saudi Tadawul, very interestingly, in the last 4 days has been in the green. They didn't fall, but DFM and ADX. Third day of opening, and they've opened in red again, but they closed at red yesterday. But I think they will recover eventually by next week, Monday, when it starts. But US markets actually tanked yesterday. Dow was down 800 points. I was following it very seriously because it's a very, as it's said in the stock market, when it's low, it's time to buy. When it's high, it's time to sell. So I was keeping a close eye on that. But that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the Smashi Business Show. Make sure to follow us across all social media channels at Smashi Business and stay ahead with our daily newsletter. You'll find the subscription link in the description. Meanwhile, in the wake of the developments in the region, we hope everyone stays safe at this critical moment. It is essential to remain united and follow guidance issued by official authorities from your country.
This has been a Smashi Business Show, a Smashi Business production, part of the Gus's Media Podcast Network. We're up to 33,000 monthly downloads across all platforms. You make this possible. If you're one of them, we appreciate you. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.